Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, Al-Ali Al-Azim, wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi al-Tahirin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope that, inshallah, everyone is doing well. Jazakumullah khairan for your interest in learning and seeking knowledge, and may Allah reward all those who are part of the process of putting together these types of seminars and opportunities for education and learning. And I want to thank Allah Ta'ala for all of His blessings. And one of the blessings being that, alhamdulillah, tonight is the night in which we celebrate the birthday anniversary of one of the greatest figures of Islam, Sayyidah Zainab Salamullahi alayha. And I want to congratulate all of you on this great occasion. So today, the topic that, alhamdulillah, we're blessed to take up and to consider is mindfulness and spirituality. The perspective I'm taking on it, the approach I'm taking on it is a critical Islamic perspective. What I mean by that is that I'm going to be looking at some examples of the modern approach to mindfulness and the modern and secular approach to spirituality. And I'm going to be talking about what are some of the potential things that we can benefit from, but also what can we critique and what can we identify as lacking from an Islamic perspective. Why am I taking up this topic? Why is it something that's important for us to consider? It has to do with, the story behind this is actually like itself worthy of its own seminar. And I think I'm just going to like summarize sort of in a nutshell, what is it that's motivating this? Mindfulness is a topic which it's an age-old practice. Spirituality is an age-old practice. And traditionally, these two concepts have always been part of the teachings of religion. All religions, including Islam, they have always had teachings when it comes to mindfulness and spirituality. In the modern era, what's happened is that human beings have been taken on, they've taken a lifestyle and they've adopted an approach towards living which has made them very much in need of something to be able to cope with the modern lifestyle. And many have, unfortunately, abandoned the true teachings of religion, but then without religion and with the modern lifestyle, they found themselves in a crisis. And so there have been people who have stepped up and said that, well, we have something for you. And it is called meditation. It is called, for example, transcendental meditation. It is, for example, called mindfulness meditation. And here you go. Here's what it is. And this is how you can practice it and you can be part of the modern lifestyle. So, for example, when it comes to mindfulness, the way that it's typically talked about in today's world, in the secular sense, secular meaning without God in the picture, is typically talked about this type of approach to living in the present, to being able to be mindful of one's thoughts and one's actions, of having times for meditation. But all of that came primarily from the Buddhist tradition. And there was somebody who was a medical doctor and an academic who, as part of researching what he can present in terms of an approach to reducing stress, he himself was a Buddhist. So he said that, well, let me take this tradition from Buddhism and let me bring it into the Western world, and let me bring it into the Western discourse and make it be something which is not directly connected to Buddhism. We'll take out the terms from it, but we'll still take the core of the practice from Buddhism. And that was done in 1979. And now in 2020, we find that mindfulness is one of those things which, you see it everywhere. I myself am involved in education, and it's something which is very big in education, and as a part of social emotional learning. Um, it's something which is found in the workplace, in the form of spirituality in the workplace. It's found in medicine practice. It's found in behavior therapy. It's in many, many different fields. And there's been thousands and thousands of studies which have shown that mindfulness is something which is effective. So what are we here today? What are we doing here today? We're trying to look at this and trying to understand, well, what is it made up of, and how can we both appreciate some aspects of it, but also look at it critically? Because as Muslims, we have a responsibility to take knowledge wherever it may be found, but to also appreciate what we already have, and to have what's called ghira of the deen, meaning that we have to have a type of pride and a type of faithfulness and a type of confidence in what it is that our religion has. So the approach I'm going to be taking, inshallah, is, let me go to the next slide here. I am going to be there's different ways of structuring this presentation. What I decided to do is to make it more practical. What I've done is taken excerpts from different guidebooks which offer advice on how to practice mindfulness. And what I'm going to be doing is presenting quotes from these books, and then we're going to see, what are some of the pros and what are some of the positive things that are being talked about, and then what are some of the critical things that we can point out about what's lacking here. Okay, and I have maybe around 6 excerpts that I've chosen, and for each one of them, I'm going to present it, and then I'll be presenting some comments about how to look at it critically. Now, what I'm going to ask all of you to do, inshallah, is to be part of this process. I want to definitely, I want to leave time for some interaction at the end, because I think there should be a lot of questions about this topic. But what I want to do, even going through the presentation, is to ask for your feedback. So the way I want to do that is through the chat window. When I present a quote, what you can be doing is looking at it, and in the chat window you can kind of give some feedback about what you see is as positive, and the pros and the cons. From an Islamic perspective, where is this lacking? Okay. And what I'll do is I'll be glancing at that as I'm presenting my comments as well, but I won't be stopping to take questions at this time, and I won't be looking for audio responses. I'm just looking right now for comments in the chat. But then at the end, inshallah, I'd be happy to have some more discussion, and even audio comments where you can speak up, inshallah. Okay. So I want to say something here that in terms of the scope of this presentation, I could have I decided to look specifically at examples from mindfulness, but there are a lot of different spiritualities that are out there now, and that are some of which are very attractive to Muslims, and in particular, the followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. We're seeing them being attracted by these spiritualities. What I've chosen is this one to focus on, but some of my comments are going to be more general. For example, one of the types of spirituality which has always been there, but is now finding more and more kind of attraction, and you see more people gravitating towards it, is a type of Islamic spirituality, but Islam without the Sharia, Islam without too much of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. In Islam, which is more about meditation and being a good person, and kind of let's say just feelings, but not too much practice. And so, and that's found even in Christianity and other religions as well. I won't be directly talking about, but definitely some of my comments have been I have put in those points, keeping that general, this more kind of different approaches in mind as well. And then I'd be happy to also take any comments or questions about that at the end of the presentation. Inshallah. Okay, so the first topic that I chose to pick up is that of center of dependence. When we when somebody is trying to get advice from these mindfulness experts or meditation experts, the question comes up that whom are they depending upon? And I have a quote here from a book which is called The Mindfulness Journal for Teens. It's a very popular book. So one of the things they suggest is that in the morning, you go look at yourself in the mirror and say out loud to yourself, I have strength, intelligence, and courage. Look at yourself and hold these words to be true. Say out loud to yourself, I am strong, intelligent, and courageous. Look at yourself and hold these words to be true. Now, close your eyes and imagine yourself taking care of all the tasks of the day and feeling proud. To finish, take 4 deep, slow breaths. Okay, now, any comments? Go ahead, tell me, what do you think? What is it that's good about this? What is it that it's lacking when we want to look at it from a critical Islamic perspective? In the meantime, as you're typing, inshallah, I'm going to just say that these type of journals and self-help books are become very popular, and they do have some very good features about them. For example, the language is very simple. The books tend to be printed very beautifully. Every page has like a different design. I have the book right here. You can see it. You can see that there's places to like kind of fill in your reflections. So it encourages thoughtfulness, reflection. Okay. So one of the comments that came up is no mention of God. It is self-positive, so it is kind of encouraging self-esteem. But what is the source? That's the question that's coming up. Okay. So good. So the what I'm seeing from all the mashallah, good, thoughtful comments that are being put in the chat window, is that yes, there's something there where it's boosting. It's a thing of like kind of looking at things and trying to look at things optimistically, trying to be positive. But it brings up the question of like, well, what is the source of reliance here? Where is the power coming from? Okay, so and this is something we need to realize, because if we just pass by this and we don't look at it critically, we might say that, well, this is awesome, right? We have a generation of teens who many of them, let's say, are lacking self-esteem. They have a low sense of self-worth, and we have an issue of rising depression and anxiety among teenagers. So what better than to encourage them to be confident about what they about their tasks, and just to feel good about themselves? That's awesome. Yes, okay, but by what means and with what type of understanding? And this is very important for us to look at these things. So I want to give some examples now from Islamic sources. So there's a famous supplication that Imam Rida alayhi salam says that whoever recites this after the morning prayer will have his needs granted by Allah, and Allah will take care of his worries. And then it's the dua in Arabic. It starts out with the following: Bismillahi wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi wa ufawwidu amri ila Allah, inna Allah basirun bil ibad, and so on and so forth. It's not a very long dua. It takes maybe 3 minutes to recite, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to recite. And if you look at the English translation, I hand over my affairs to Allah. This idea of tafweed is a concept which goes beyond just tawakkul. Tawakkul means that I'm taking Allah as my wakil. I'm taking Him as my agent. I'm taking Him as the one I'm going to be carrying out my affairs. Tafweed is even more delicate, even more precise, that everything I have, my very existence, everything, I'm recognizing that I'm dependent on Allah for that. And for sure, those things that I want to accomplish, they're also in the hands of Allah too. And I know that Allah is all seeing in relation to His servants. And then after some very powerful quotes from the Quran, the Imam alayhi salam teaches us to say that only that which Allah wills will come to pass. There is no strength, no power except with Allah. Only that which Allah wills shall come to pass, not that which people will. Only that which Allah wills shall come to pass, even if people detest it. Sufficient for me is the nurturer, or the one who's the master of the affairs, against the nurtured, meaning that why do I have to worry about those who themselves are subject to the mastership of God? Sufficient for me is the creator against the creation. Sufficient for me is the sustainer against the sustained. Sufficient for me is Allah, the Lord of the worlds. No, brothers and sisters, like this is powerful. This is beautiful. This is unfortunately one of those things that I don't think has been promoted enough in our communities. This is medicine. This is not just medicine. It teaches us the right. This is a tarbiyah thing that the Ahlul Bayt have given us to train us how to think and how to prepare for our day. In the Quran, Allah Ta'ala very clearly identifies for us what is to be the center of our focus, where is to be the center of our reliance. He doesn't say he doesn't say that recognize your needs and state them. He doesn't just say that say and then you yourself will just find magically like what you need. He very clearly says that call me, ud'uni astajib lakum, and I will hear you. And the great mufassirin of the Quran have said that both of these elements are very crucial. Number one is that you should call, meaning that you should do that acknowledgement that you are in need of something. You can't handle it alone. Number one. So that's one step that maybe we can learn and we can be encouraged to do from, meaning that not learn, meaning that what this what this entry in the journal has done is that at least this part is kind of addressing this, that you do have to acknowledge that not everything is in place for you. But the second thing is call me, right? That second part is also a component of making dua. They have to recognize that Allah is the one who is responsible for answering the duas, not the people, not the means, not the channels, not ourselves, but Allah. And then when that type of dua is done, that's when the response is given. And one who doesn't do that, it could be argued that in this verse, Allah says that that those who don't take this approach willingly, meaning that they say that no, I don't need this, then they are among the mustakbirin. They are among the arrogant, and they will enter Jahannam, and then in Jahannam they will be forced. They'll have forced humility upon them, meaning then they'll realize, what was wrong with them. Okay, now I want to quote now from the Quran, and this is along the same topic. And these are very, these are verses where sometimes maybe we don't look at in this light. And I'm sure all of the participants today have read these verses. But now look at it from this perspective of what, how is it that that journal entry is calling somebody to think about what they have, and what is it that the Quran teaches us? So the Quran gives us these examples of individuals who had achieved the highest spiritual state. They were higher than the Zen masters. They were higher than the, let's say they had the highest level of consciousness and mindfulness. And they understood mindfulness the way it was meant to be in its full sense. And maybe if I get a chance, I'll talk more about that. What does it mean in the full sense, mindfulness? But you see them, for example, Nabi Musa alayhi salam, when it's a story of the cow, and then they say that, are you mocking us? And he says that, I'm not mocking you. That's not something that I have ever done. It's not something that I do. And somebody who mocks others is actually somebody who is among the jahilin. They're ignorant. But he doesn't just say that. He doesn't just say that I'm not among the ignorant. He says that I seek Allah's protection lest I should be one of the ignorant. And that teaches us that when it comes to these virtues that the awliya of Allah, those who were the closest to Allah, that they possessed, they constantly saw themselves as possessing those because of Allah's continued moment by moment attention to them. Meaning they didn't see it as being their own. They saw it being something that was from Allah. Okay, the same thing we see in the story of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, at least according to the interpretation, which says that this second saying is from Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. He says that وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي. That this goodness that I have, this ability I have to remain on this path of virtue and taqwa, it is because of the continued and constant attention of God. It is from Him that, in His mercy, that I am able to stay away from, the carnal nature of the soul. The continued acknowledgement, this is from God. Now, I'm going to go back here and we compare that to, this thing here. It says that, okay, I have these things. I have strength, I have intelligence and courage. I am these things. This is very different than the Quranic teachings here. And, another example of Nabi Musa that I didn't put into the slide is when he has this incredible task to accomplish of facing Pharaoh. His response isn't that I am equipped with knowledge and with power and I'm going to take Pharaoh. His response is Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. It's a reliance on Allah. Immediately it's turning to Him. It's immediately acknowledging God's role in his life, his present life. And so there is a huge element of mindfulness there, but it's different than the type of mindfulness that's being spoken about here. So if we want to summarize this discussion about what is the center of dependence, then from the secular spiritual side, there's three things. Of course, this is just a summary, and maybe if we want, we could go into deeper. But what we learned from that quote, at least, and similar type of advice that's given, is identify your challenges and worries at the start of the day. Okay, that's good. All right, acknowledge your traits and abilities. Believe you will be able to overcome your challenges. From the Islamic spiritual side, present your tasks and worries to Allah after the Fajr prayer. The time after Fajr prayer is a precious time, and we see that it's a time where the connection to God is stronger. There's less interference in the bandwidth, and the Imams have taught us like many things. Some of them are very beautiful. Like one of them, for example, that a lot of people I've seen hasn't been talked about that much. It's something which is super beautiful. It's that if somebody has some type of worries when they wake up in the morning, then after the Fajr prayer, they can put their hand on their chest and repeat this dhikr of Allah, Ya Fatah, 70 times. Ya Fatah. Ya Fatah is the one who opens and the one who is victorious. And it's something which is a comprehensive understanding that Allah is the one who can open that heart which is constricted. Allah is the one who can give us victory in whatever challenges that we're facing. So that's just an example. And then this dua that I quoted is another example. Second one is acknowledge your abilities and where they come from. Yes, acknowledge your traits and abilities, but know that they came from Allah and their continued dependence is also from Allah. Like just the other night, I was looking at this one hadith from Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, where when he was praised once for his excellence and virtue, and the Khalifa was like, why do you worship Allah so much? He says that, okay, you praise me this much, but where does that come from? For him, it's impossible to think about his virtues without thinking about Allah. And then call upon Allah with your requests, and they will be answered. Allah will always do what's best for you. Okay? So that's one example. Now let's look at another example. This topic here is aversion, dislike, and change in others. And once again, I'm going to ask you all to give your thoughts in the chat window. I'm going to put up, I think, two quotes. One of them is the following. This is from this book called How to Train a Wild Elephant. So this is what the author says. And the language is just, it's beautiful. Like it's very, very like simple to understand, but really they make their point well. And these are things that can be learned from. Aversion is the hidden source of anger and aggression. It arises from the notion that if we could just manage to get rid of something or someone, then we would be happy. What we humans wish to get rid of in order to become happy could be as trivial as a mosquito or as large as a nation. Okay, I want to add here, for example, it can be, for example, an oppressor. It can be oppression. Like like right now, like it's important to look at examples too. Now, there are a few ideas, this is what they say, more absurd than the notion if I could arrange things and people to be just as I want them, then I would be happy. It is absurd for at least two reasons. First of all, even if we had the power to make everything in the world perfect for us, that perfection could only last a second because all the other people in the world have different ideas of how they would like things to be and are working to get them on their way. Our perfect is not perfect to anyone else. Secondly, forcing perfection on the world is bound to fail because of the truth of impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. Okay, now, if somebody accepts this, then what would it mean? That's what I'm asking all of you to give your feedback, inshallah. And I'm gonna, in the meantime, put up another quote. In this practice, we say yes to everyone, meaning in the practice of mindfulness. In this practice of mindfulness, we say yes to everyone and everything that happens. When you notice the impulse to disagree, consider whether it is really necessary. Could you just nod or even be silent but pleasant? I'm still waiting for you guys to give your comments, by the way. Whenever it is not dangerous to you or others, agree with others and with what is happening in your life. Okay, so go ahead, please. I'd love to hear your comments here. So what is it that you appreciate about these quotes? What is it that you notice is missing from them? Or maybe it's wrong? I'll put the first one up again as well so you can see that one. Okay, so dangerous notions of conformity being promoted in that second one. Okay, then if we can avoid aversion, then we are accepting Allah's will. Okay, that's a very interesting comment there, and it's something that we need to talk about. Positive is that it allows you to flow with life and have more peace. The issue is that when something is morally or ethically wrong, we need to disagree. Excellent. Second one, not encouraged to stand up for yourself when facing injustice, teaching us to be passive. Okay, trying to promote contentment, but sometimes we should disagree with some things and strive to change. Just because we can't get perfect doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Okay, so great. Like it's something which is nuanced, meaning it's not so easy to say that this is wrong or this is right, and that's not the purpose of this presentation. Is there's some valuable approaches that are being suggested here, and some of these techniques, like I said, I mean it's been shown through study after study that these are things which can give somebody a type of calmness and comfort. But we need to look deeper. We need to understand that if somebody takes this approach, what is it going to lead to, and what kind of, at the end of the day, like they might, if they're going to get, let's say, contentment and satisfaction and happiness in their lives, well, at what expense? Okay, so I want to again look at some Islamic sources. One of them is the numerous traditions in which support the ayat of the Quran from the Ahlul Bayt, which talk about the importance of resistance and of taking a stand against things which, as Sister Zita pointed out, that regarding Aziza pointed out that regarding ethical and moral issues. Among them is one who denies evil with his hand, tongue, and heart. That is the one who is seeking to perfect his virtues. That's Imam Ali Islam says. And there's one who denies it with his tongue and his heart, but does not deny with his hand. He has clung to two characteristics among the virtues and has lost one of them. And among them is one who denies evil with his heart, but leaves aside denying with their heart and their tongue. He has lost the most honorable of those virtues among the three and has clung to one of them. And among them is one who leave aside denying with his tongue, heart, and hand. That is the dead one. Sorry about the translation. That is the dead one among the living. So if we compare these, right, the message is be pleasant with those who disagree. Try to agree, and not only that, not just a matter of like tolerating, but beyond that, ask yourself, why don't you agree with them? See if you can agree with them, as long and just the exception that's given here, as long as it's not dangerous, and seems to be what is missing here is physical danger, as long as it's not physically dangerous to you and others. Okay, now, in order, Islamic spirituality, in order to qualify as being alive, this is from the, Imam Ali Islam's saying that, the one who is, if you want to be alive, if you don't want to be mayyitul ahya, the one who is dead among the living, then you have to take a stand. You have to not be in a state of acceptance with regards to people's, even their stances that they take, even the actions that they're practicing, their morals, right? If it's something which is munkar, as defined by God, by the absolute standard, then you have to have a stance on it. And in fact, you have a sense of responsibility, like this idea of responsibility to others, like that seems to be lacking in the secular thing, that you have a responsibility to others. One of the ways that Allah guides people is through all of us, right? And that's, this is the system that Allah, meaning that I need to be guided by my community, and I need to be a guide for my community, right? That's Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar. So this is the idea of caring for others and having this wanting of them to also be on the path of guidance. This is very different than what's being presented. Now there is a point that one of the brother Ali pointed out here, which is a very interesting and important point regarding, well, what about acceptance of Allah's decree and qada and qadr? And that's something which I didn't address in this slide right here, but we could look at it from that perspective as well. That on one hand, I am upset. I'm not in agreement. I'm taking a stand against, let's say, these morals or these values or these practices. I'm not going to agree with it just as long as it's not like physically harmful to me. But on the other hand, it's not something which I'm going to. I'm also realizing that there is one who is in charge. There is one who is governing the universe, and there is there's just a state of acceptance that I have to have with regards to events that are transpiring around me. But we're going to get to this idea of events and interpreting them in just a bit here, inshallah. Okay, the next topic is that of gratefulness, and I'm going to give you a few different examples here. This one is quite commonly cited in different mindfulness techniques. The idea of keeping like a gratitude journal. In this one, at the end of the day, write a list of at least 5 things that happened during the day that you are grateful for. Here, the next 2 examples are particularly a gratefulness when it comes to eating. So the exercise here is when you eat, take a moment to look into the food or drink as if you could see backward into its history. Use the power of imagination to see where it comes from and how many people might have been involved in bringing it to your plate. Think of the people who planted, weeded, and harvested the food, the truckers who transported it, the food packagers and plant workers, the grocers and checkout people, and the family members or other cooks who prepared the food. Thank those people before you take a sip or a bite. And in this book, the author goes to do an analysis and says that, well, even if you look at just beyond the human beings and you look at all the animals and the insects, for example, the bees that pollinated, say the flowers or the plants, and you look at all the creatures, then it comes into like millions for even bringing like a single plate of food on your table. Now, in that same book, another suggestion is given, which is a quote from a monk, which is, there are some people who eat an orange but don't really eat it. They eat their sorrow, fear, and anger, meaning that while they're eating, even though the action that they're doing is eating food, actually, like if they were to like monitor themselves, the food part of it is just an excuse for them to like rehash, memories of the past, or to like worry about things in the future that many of which are out of their control, and they're not present. They're not really present with body and mind united. You need some training just to enjoy your food. It has come from the whole cosmos just for our nourishment, and this is a miracle. So seeing food as a miracle. So and then they say final words: when eating, just eat. When drinking, just drink. Mindfulness is the very best seasoning for your food and for your entire life. Enjoy each bite. Enjoy each moment. So any comments about these 3 pieces of advice? One of them was about the idea of keeping the list 5 things that you're grateful for. The other one was about tracing back the food and all the different chains that it came from. And then the third one was about being mindful and being in the present while you're eating. Okay, so it's important to recognize the gift of food and be grateful for it for your plate, but you're meant to thank Allah first and foremost. The gratefulness does not encourage connection to Allah, so the connection to God leaves out God once again. Gratitude needs to be to God first, but it does allow one to see the good in life and focus on what is working. Okay. All right, great. Gratefulness and thankfulness are encouraged in Islam, but is not acknowledging that all risk is from Allah. Okay, so inshallah, these are great comments. Thank you so much. I do want to say here that these practices are very very good. Like, it's something which is very much like in line with the teachings of Islam, and I've attended classes from teachers of ethics and spirituality where they talk about the practices that they themselves adopt and they themselves have, and it's part of their routine, and they give examples of the great ones of the past, and they say how they used to do these things. Like, for example, I clearly remember one of my teachers was saying the story of somebody, a very pure individual. He was a special person, and he had this habit of, like, when he was given a plate of rice, he would take up each grain of rice, and he would, for before he started like eating, he would just like take a few one by one. He would look at it and he would ponder on it and look at its shape and look at how it's made in such a way, and then he would start tracing it back to like its origin. And this idea of like being thankful when somebody eats their food, you find it within the seerah of the Prophet and of the Imams alayhim assalam. Their bites would be filled with the remembrance of Allah. So definitely, they had a presence, and the presence of that moment they were living in the moment at that time. But we need to we can try to, like, it's worth a whole seminar itself just looking at those traditions of how the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt used to eat their food, and to look at it from this perspective, that what was the scope of their mindfulness, and what was the depth of it. So I'm going to now give some examples from the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, which we can apply to this idea of gratitude. This is from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam regarding the Quranic verse that and most of them do not believe in Allah without doing shirk. This is from Surah Yusuf. Most people do not believe in Allah without doing shirk. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean that most people are polytheists? The Imam alayhi salam clarifies that this is in reference to man's statement, were it not for so and so, I surely would have perished. Were it not for so and so, I would have indeed been afflicted. Were it not for so and so, my family would be at a loss. And you hear these things. You hear this from believers, like, it was because of them that we did this, or because of that doctor, or because of this hard work from this community worker. Without them, then definitely this project would have failed. We hear this. Do you not see that he has associated a partner to Allah in His kingdom? What kind of partner? A partner who gives him sustenance and protects him. This part right here, a partner who gives him sustenance and protects him. That's the one where it's really like the key part of this tradition. When somebody sees sustenance and protection coming independently of Allah, that's a problem. And then somebody said, well, what if I say, were it not for Allah granting me so and so's help, I would have perished? The Imam says, that's fine. You can say that. And then we have Imam Rida, he says, whoever is not grateful to the deliverer of a blessing from among the creation has not been grateful to Allah the Mighty and the Grand. And that's what was reflected in your comments as well. Now, this here is a very beautiful tradition. And what I'm going to do at the end of this presentation is I'm going to be offering some suggestions for some practices in traditional Islamic spirituality that maybe need to be given more attention, that maybe people aren't aware of, or they've been sidelined, but I feel that we need to like take a closer look at. One of them is these small but very powerful spiritual practices. Because if you look at these books, this one or the other one that I've been quoting, like that's what it's all about. Like these small but very like effective, easy to do practices. So here's one of them. Imam Rada alayhi salam, he says that the hadith says that kathiran ma yunshidu, like hada shir, like he used to frequently recite this poetry. When engulfed in blessings, desist from conceit. Say instead, "O Allah, protect and complete." Okay, now, when I did the translation there, I took a little bit of time to make it rhyme, and the reason is because the Arabic itself rhymed, and the other reason why I did that is because I wanted to show this point, and it's kind of related to this whole topic, that sometimes the issue isn't that of what that we don't have these teachings. The issue is how we're taking them and presenting them. Like, I don't know about what you guys think, but I feel that when you see it in this like rhyming sort of thing, and I'm sure that we have people here, and I recognize some of the names who are much more talented at this than I am. I'm sure if I handed this off to one of them, they would do a much better job. But even in this form, it looks more attractive than just doing a basic translation, right? So part of it is the way that we package, and this is something that we can take from these researchers, authors, thinkers, about how they package things. And by the way, what's meant here is that what's meant here is that when the Imam alayhi salam says that if you find yourself being blessed with something, and then stop, pause, acknowledge that blessing, and then to ask Allah two things. First of all, that protect it, meaning that don't let it go away from me. Like, now that I have this blessing, let it stick around with me, because who knows, right? Second of all, complete it, meaning what? Meaning that this is not the only thing that I need in order to achieve the purpose of my existence. I was created for something where I want to be blessed infinitely. I want to have you. I want to have Allah. Allah's infinite. So there's more to it, and I want to ask that from Allah. These are very powerful spiritual teachings here. Okay. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the dua Arafah, he says this. He says that I'm acknowledging these things, like my lips when they close, what they close upon and they compress, the movements of my tongue in speaking, the joint at the back of my mouth and jaw, the sockets of my molar teeth, the place where I swallow my food and the drink. He says that I couldn't, even if I were to spend my whole life thanking you for even one of these blessings, I couldn't do so. Even if I were, then I'd have to thank you even more. Okay. Now, this one right here, this is important. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is actually relates to this. If I go back to, how the first quote, it says that at the end of the day, write a list of at least 5 things that happened during the day that you are grateful for. Now, let's take that idea and look at it from a prophetic lens. I mean, how did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do this? Was it like this? Like, what would he put on that list? Okay, let's look at this tradition. This is from Sunan Nabi, the second edition, in which the translator, he improved on the first edition of it, and the PDF is available online. So from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that when something pleasing befell the Prophet, he used to say Alhamdulillahi ala hadhihi ni'mah. When something distressing befell him, he would say Alhamdulillahi ala kulli hal. Praise be to Allah in every situation. So what would the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam put in that journal there of those things that he felt gratitude towards? Which events would he put there? What would he do? What do you think? If somebody can, like, what would his journal look like there, based on this? Anybody? Okay, so one of the attendees says, "Good health, food, a smile, welcoming greeting." Again, now let's go back to what that what they said. They said that at the end of the day, write a list of these 5 things that happened during the day that you're grateful for. Okay, now if we take that and then we look at this tradition of the Prophet, he says that when something befell him that was pleasing, he would say this, and then when something distressing him, he would say this. In both cases, he says, "Praise be to Allah." So, but if you, I just want to make sure that maybe I hope that the point is clear here. The point, ahsantum, Sister Aziza. Yes, exactly. Um, that he would basically, his journal would be every single thing that happened to him that day. Every single thing that happened in that day. Why? Because he sees it all from Allah, right? Which is a much deeper perspective than what's being discussed here. Okay, no, it's not. It's fine. Okay, somebody wants to do this. They want to, like, let's say they sit down at the end of the day. They want 5 things that they're grateful for that happened to them that day. But what about those things that they're not grateful for? Like, how can they now move to a deeper perspective where they're seeing themselves not an independent actor? Um, they're seeing themselves, like, under the qada and qadr of Allah. And that's what I'm trying to point out here, that like the Islamic teachings, they put a whole deeper dimension to these concepts of gratitude. Okay, um, let's go on. And I wanted thank you, Sister Teresa, for those comments about why people are going to the self-help books, and I'm going to make some comments at the end, inshallah, about that too. So let's summarize here. So from the secular perspective, okay, be grateful at certain times throughout the day. Okay, fine. Like, for example, at night. Islamic spirituality, be thankful at all times, including certain special times of the day. So, in the advice of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wasallam, we see that, when you step in, when you sit down for a meal, when you get up from the meal, when you begin your wudu, when you begin your salah, when you wake up in the morning, when you enter into the washroom, when you leave the washroom, when different things are happening to you, like all these things have occasions for thankfulness to Allah. Okay, second of all, select events that you should be grateful for. Okay, now here in Islamic spirituality, be grateful for everything. Know it is from Him and is not random. Sorry, I should say is not random there. So inshallah, I don't know if there's a way of fixing that right now, but anyway, you guys get it, inshallah. All right. Third, acknowledge the apparent conduits of your food. You know how the exercise was like, think about, like, okay, where did this go for? And this is, by the way, specific advice from teachers of ethics and spirituality. They say that, yes, spend a moment or a minute or two before you start eating, just thinking about where this came from. I'm talking about within Islamic traditions. Like, think about where this came from and feel that gratitude. But the whole time, it's not just the apparent, it's the hidden conduits as well, right? Like, we know that, for example, we know that all goodness that comes our way, it's not a random process. It's through the attention of the wali of the time. The imam of the time is responsible for all of our blessings, and we're thankful to him. We're thankful to Allah, who is the one who has made him the wali, right? Acknowledge the blessing of being able to, and again, sorry for the disjoint slide there, but the idea is, acknowledge the blessing of being able to process that food and to be able to digest that food and everything that happens with that food. Seize the opportunity to remember the greater purpose and supplicate. That's what, that one poetry from Imam Rida alayhi salam, where you don't just stop there. Like, let's say something comes my way, I say, Allahumma sallim wa tammim. That's what the Arabic is. Allahumma, oh Allah, whatever I've been given, I keep around. But now I want even the other thing as well too. I want the perfection. I want, to be, I want to have that, connection with you. I want to be able to see you. And then the last one, be present when you eat and feel satisfied. The Islamic spirituality, be present, feel satisfied, acknowledge the cause of all causes, and feel infinitely indebted to Him. Okay, so The last part of the presentation, I'm drawing to a close of my formal comments here, is just some ideas and about how to encourage individual and community Islamic spirituality, because the one of the reasons why you find people turning to like the self-help books and some other techniques is sometimes, okay, it's a medical issue, and let's say they've been advised by their doctors, it's a part of a therapy. Sometimes it's that they feel that the religion doesn't have enough. They feel like a kind of like type of sense of maybe it's dry, and they're not getting what they need from it, and so they're like, well, what can I supplement with? And sometimes that's how it starts out, but then they start relying on that being their source of spirituality. Eventually it becomes something which can even eventually take them away from Islamic Islam. And we if you don't know people who have taken this path, I certainly do, and it's something which is something we have to be aware about. Now, what are some things to consider here? So here's some questions to ask. Okay, when it comes to the modern form of spirituality, first of all, is when do you feel fear? You often have talk about like happiness and love and acceptance and those things, but where is the fear aspect in this spirituality? Or are you taught not to fear anyone? Because if you go to the Islamic traditions, the mu'min is supposed to be in a balance, like between like the two pails of a scale, between hope and fear, and both of them are essential in order for somebody to progress. Like somebody who reads the Quran, it's beautiful how Allah Ta'ala, like he pulls the strings of our heart. Sometimes he's like Arhamur Rahimin, and he's referring to himself in that way. Sometimes he's referring to us himself like وَهُوَ شَدِيدُ الْمِحَالِ, and you read that, and you feel like, especially if you're in a good state, you feel scared, right? You feel a sense of the power of Allah, and you feel your own significance, and you feel scared of not you feel scared of um, you know the tremendousness of Allah and His awesomeness, and that's a positive thing because it makes fear of His creation melt away, right? So this type of approach of just the love stuff, right? It can be lacking at the end of the day. And when you go to Dua al-Iftita, Imam, according to the narration, say that's from the 12th Imam alayhi salam, or then it would be وَأَيْقَنْتُ أَنَّكَ أَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ فِي مَوْضِعِ الْعَفْوِ وَالرَّحْمَةِ وَأَشَدُّ الْمُعَاقِبِينَ فِي مَوْضِعِ النَّكَالِ وَالنَّقِيمَةِ. That, oh Allah, yes, you're Arham ar-Rahimin. When it comes to those occasions when somebody is allowing themselves and they're qualifying for that mercy, then there's no one who is the most merciful. But when it comes to a situation where the person has blocked themselves from that mercy, and it would be unjust for Allah to show them that mercy, then ashaddul mu'aqibin, then no one does it the way Allah does it. Okay, how prominent is the hereafter? Or are you told to forget the past and future and be concerned only about the present? This is very important. We have traditions which say that a believer has to their hum and gham, like their occupation, the thing which really propels them, has to be matters of the hereafter. Yes, they're concerned about their worldly affairs, but all of it has it's purposeful, and the purpose is gearing towards the hereafter. How much of your spirituality is individualistic and self-serving as opposed to taking care of the rights of others? Islam teaches us that for somebody to, let's say, meditate on their own and, let's say, ignore the rights that other people have on them, they might get a buzz from that. But if they were to, like, let's say, forego that meditation and they were to serve somebody who is needy, they might not get that buzz. They might just feel really tired. But if they did it with the right intention, then they could have earned Jannah with that one act there, right? And so Islam is a religion which tells us that spirituality, even though there are times for, and I'll talk about this in just a second, like there are times for meditation, there are times for khalwa and obeying Allah, and worshiping Allah on one's own, and in a group setting, but also all the acts that are considered mundane and worldly, they're supposed to be things which take us closer to Allah as well, and we're supposed to find spirituality within them. So, and that's why Islam is, the holistic religion. Who chooses what, when, and how you should worship? Is it up to you or someone else? It's very important. Like, let's say there's a spirituality which says that, when you want to, you can have your time of meditation. And you can do it the way you want to as well. You want to lie down, you lie down. You want to sit up, you sit up. You want to, whatever, it's up to you. Okay. And you can, like, for example, if you're going to choose a mantra, you can choose your own mantra when you do your meditation. Well, and even sometimes when it comes to, like, say, the names of Allah, like, who is it that's saying that you should say this name of Allah in these many times? Like, where is that prescription coming from? Is it based on what's convenient? Is it based on, is somebody their own prophet and the imam? Who is the imam here? This is very important here, that from Islamic concept, there's always the imam who is the guide, and especially for followers of the Ahlul Bayt, like, should be a very, very important thing, that who is it that's telling us that this is what we should do? What connection do they have to that divine source of guidance? Are they a pure channel of conveying that divine guidance to us, or are they just kind of doing their own understanding, their own interpretations? Well, then who says that they're qualified to be our imam? How can you measure the value of a ritual? Is it based on what happens instantly to your emotional state? Is it a form of instant gratification? And this is something that we have to ask, that why are these forms of spirituality becoming popular? Part of it is because of people's, like, what meets the need of the modern person, right? And they want instant gratification. So it's like, well, here you go. Here's something which immediately you do it, you're going to feel great. You're going to feel awesome. So go and do it. Okay, well, is that what, is that the litmus test for what's good and what's not? What if, like, I'm taking care of my kids and it's hard, it's out, it's cold out there. I'm taking them for a walk. It's hot out there. I'm taking them to the playground. It's hard, right? I'm not being instantly gratified, but Islam says that, you do it for the right intention. That's your spirituality. That's part of it. Who are the role models, exemplars, and guides you are asked to follow? Or is it based on you and is there anybody there? Like, is it just about you and yourself and that's it? Why is it that, this in Islam, like, there's this huge focus on always look to, these people and these prophets and, the imams and make them be part of your spirituality, even thinking about them, talking to them, admiring their qualities. Like, that's something which seems to be lacking and just cut out from a lot of the modern forms. So I just have, I'm sorry for doing it just as a list here. I'm sure that I could have made it more pretty, but I had to prioritize a lot of things going on. There are some suggestions I have here. So first of all, people ask, well, is there a meditation in Islam? Yeah, sure. Okay, we have meditation, and some of it is general purpose for everyone. Some of it requires some type of development in order for it to occur in a proper manner. Not all meditative practices are, recommended or advised for everyone, because sometimes somebody can be spinning around thinking about something, and really it's just they don't have any basis for what to think about, and there's no net effect. But some things that are general purpose, one of them is meditation over the past in order to help the present and future. Thinking over one's let's say lifetime, and saying, well, where is it that I need to where have I fallen short in my responsibility, and how can I make that up? That's something which is very, very powerful, because it can then make everything we do going forward much more effective. So for example, I think back and I'm like, there was that person that I really, really deprived them of their rights. I made fun of them in public. I did ghibah of them and they suffered as a result. Let me give them a call and just tell them that, what, I may have done something to you in the past that wasn't right. Can you please forgive me? That one act there might boost my spirituality tremendously. Okay, meditation over death and the akhirah. This is something which, even on a weekly basis, if somebody can spend, 10 minutes, for example, going to the graveyard if they can. If not, then even just thinking about it. And one of the Quran tells us that one of the special gifts that was given to some of the prophets is dhikrud dar, the idea that while they're in this world, they remember the hereafter. So just reflecting over death, even though you're probably not going to find it in a book like this. They, they they said don't think about that, right? It can actually be very, very healing and very powerful. Okay, the development of spiritual works in English. This is something that I gave you the example of that poem, and I'll give you another example in just a bit here. But we need to do some more work in this area. Like there's such beauty in our, the examples that we have. For example, Sunan Nabi. Like there's tons of like powerful spiritual advice that it's much deeper than what we have, like let's say in these journals and these self-help books, but it needs to be brought out and it needs to be put in the right language and beautiful colors and pictures and translations. And I'll give you some examples. Quran circles, this is something which is starting to pick up, but I want to encourage this, that we shouldn't just leave it for the month of Ramadan, and it shouldn't be just in that form of like where it's kind of boring and dry. No, we're gonna come together and we're gonna read Quran, right? Even can be done online. Maybe we'll do like a verse at a time, and we'll just do a few pages, and maybe then just read, let's say the translation of like let's say one half of a page together. And these type of things can be very effective. Prayers in congregation where we pray and then afterwards we interact in a social level. Like this is something that Islam tells us. It's not just about you yourself and in your own private of your like room or something. Giving daily sadaqah, daily istighfar 100 times, daily salawat 100 times. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Dua with commentary. This is something I'm going to be ending up right now, inshallah, and then I'll leave the remaining time for questions, comments. Having dua with commentary. This is something which I really want to encourage and promote in the communities, that if we look at the tradition of, let's say, what the in the Iranian centers of spirituality, you find that when they read the dua is not written in a language which is native for them, and not only that, they also recognize the need to like make the words kind of apply to the current situation. So they have these people who are masters at doing this, of bringing out emotion, of connecting it to like what's going on in people's lives, connecting to the current events, connecting it with other let's say sayings from the Quran and the Hadith. This is an art form. This is like something we need to learn from. One of the things that they've done, like as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, is they've taken these age-old traditions and they've said that, well, how do we adopt this to the needs of the modern person? So we have the same, we can learn from that we have certain needs now. They're different than, let's say, 50 years ago. So why do we have the same rituals and the same program? It should be done in a different way. Promotion of the etiquette and rituals of Hadith, I'll be talking about that. I'll give you an example in just a second. The study of the Hadith on al-Basri and other spiritual traditions. This is something which, I would definitely recommend that, those of you who are seeking genuine Islamic spirituality, there are multiple commentaries on this incredible Hadith by some of the greatest scholars. And, it's one of those comprehensive Hadith that really gives us such a beautiful perspective on what does it mean to be a spiritual Muslim. Or what is spirituality from an Islamic perspective, and other spiritual traditions. Like for example, there's the one where Imam Hussein alayhi salam was asked, how did you enter the morning? And then he responds with such beautiful words when he talks about like how when I entered this morning, I entered and he says that. أصبحت ولي رب فوقي والنار أمامي والموت يطلبني والحساب محدق بي. And it's like each one of these is like worth just looking at independently. I woke up in the morning and I had a Lord above me, and I had the fire in front of me, and death was seeking me, and the reckoning is something which is coming towards me, and I'm bound to my actions, and things are not the way that it's not up to me the way things are, but rather the affairs are in the hands of one other than me, and so on and so forth. There's that tradition. There's another tradition of a man who comes to Imam Ali alayhi salam, and he asks about how do how do you do self-accounting, and then Imam Islam talks about how to view the day. These are things that we can definitely learn from. These rituals need to be promoted, and we need to talk about them more. For example, the Prophet, whenever he would awake, he would go into sujood and he would say this, Alhamdulillah alladhi ahyani ba'da ma amatani wa ilayhi an-nushur. You know, these are things that we can talk about, and then we can even do research on them. Let's say we put it out there in the community, and we do a study, and we say that this is what happened. That's awesome, right? We can write our own books then, and we can say, oh, these are research backed. As if it wasn't enough that the Ahlul Bayt are saying. Of course it is, but just to add to it, we can say this is what happens in the community when these things are done. Just in terms of like English literature, and I'm drawing to an end here. Just as an example of this is from some of the Sunni translators and what they've been able to do. You see that when they translate a dua of the Prophet, everything rhymes. Everything's according to a certain like it's not iambic pentameter. It's one of the other forms, but it's like a rhythm and certain syllables, and we can learn from this when it comes to the way that we translate our works. If you look at in Persian literature, there's so much emphasis on the poetry, whether it be poetry of the Maqtal Imam Hussein alayhi salam or poetry in the form of munajat. We need to have that in our tradition as well, in my humble opinion. And the last thing is just, we do have our own system for mindfulness. And I gave you some example of meditation, but it's something which now you see that, it's being documented and there's frameworks being developed for it. But it's something which it definitely requires, more. It's not just a matter of, okay, this is Islamic thing. Here's the book. Here you go. Go ahead and practice it. It's something which requires a lot of explanation and working with people who can give us advice, and explain this for us, because in everyone's situation, how they can be mindful. It's something which differs depending on their own situation, and that's something that we find within the tradition of the Ahlul Bayt, that not everyone could be mindful at the same level because they just hadn't reached that level in terms of their awareness. And so this idea of tarbiyah, the idea of being part of a process of elevating and going from one stage to another stage to another stage. This is what we find as part of the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So in some, alhamdulillah, what we looked at is we saw, we did a critical view of some examples, just a few select examples of secular spirituality. We looked at it from an Islamic perspective. We gave some, just questions to ask about other forms of spirituality. And finally, we ended with some advice and tips for both individuals and for the community. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala tahirin. So now I will, inshallah, be looking at the questions that have been posed. I think there's a place here where I can see those questions. Where are they here? View audience questions. Okay. All right. So one question here is, sometimes our family watches shows when we eat. Is that taking away from the mindfulness of the act? Okay. So, first of all, we need to understand, like, what kind of mindfulness are we talking about? Like, and because that term tends to be used in a secular way, I'm hesitant to just say, be mindful according to what that said. Now, we can learn some techniques from that, and there's definitely some wisdom there for sure. Okay, but what I want to encourage is that let's look beyond that. Let's look to the teaching of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Now, when we look at eating meals, we're told in Hadith that time that you spend, it's not count against your overall time that you've been given in your life. So go ahead, use those meals as a way of family bonding, as a way of talking and finding out what's going on in your children's lives, in your parents' lives, and your siblings, whatever. Just talk, right? It's something that can have a huge impact even on just family dynamics and even emotional and spiritual well-being. And beyond that, yes, like if somebody wants to like see this being the rizq of Allah and they want to be like thankful to Allah, then if it's just a matter of like being entertained, then um, by something else external, they're missing out on this thing right here. So if we look at the seerah of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they used to like make time, like it was something that was a ritual for them, like eating. It was something that it would be an act of humbleness to God. It would be something that would be a communal act. They would be with others, and it would be something which it would be the act itself, not a means to do something else like watching something. Okay. All right. Next question was, what about the Sufi practice of meditation and mindfulness? So, oh yes, and thank you. And remembering Imam Hussein Islam while drinking water. That's saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, saying Alhamdulillah when we finish. And by the way, again, one of those spiritual tips that is there's a very beautiful salawat that has been given to us. If somebody wants to do salawat for Sayyidah Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, from a very reputable source, it's been said that if somebody recites that salawat before eating their food, that food will become nur for them. It will become spiritual light for them. Okay, so that's something that the teachers of spirituality and ethics have actually said that it's something that should be known about, and we should tell people about, that this is one of those rights which is very important. Okay, the next question was about what about Sufi practice of meditation and mindfulness? So I want to make sure that we ask these questions. That who is this coming from? Is it from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam? Is it something which is being conveyed to us from a proper source who has access to them? The prescriptions that are being given, who is making them up? Is it being made up by just or individuals who are just doing like that, or is it something which has a basis to it? It's something, the person who's giving that, they have access to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. And then what is it that we're being called to do? Like, for example, let's say that somebody tells you, okay, well, sit back, close your eyes and think about, the name of Allah. Okay, to ponder about this name of Allah. Okay, now who's to say, and I'm saying this here, and I'm just putting the question right now because there's a lot more to say, but at least I'll put the question out there. Who's to say that the thoughts that are coming into our mind are thoughts of Allah, and they're not even, and who's to say that they're thoughts of Allah and not thoughts about this other thing which we're calling a name of Allah? Okay, what I mean by that, meaning that there's a name of Allah and then there's Allah. Okay, now we know that on an existential level, Allah is one with His names. But when, let's say I'm told as a novice, I'm told to reflect on the name of Allah. Well, I could be reflecting on this entity, which is, let's say I know as, Al-Musawwir. Okay, and what I'm thinking about and, those conclusions I'm reaching at through this process of meditation are actually something which it's something other than Allah. Okay, why? Because I haven't been taught like the things which come before that. Right? So the teachings of the Sharia, the act of leading a pure life, the mustahabat that we've been given, when somebody practices them and they're consistent in practicing them, then we're told that the result of that is that Allah Ta'ala will come to them and they will come to know Him in a way that they didn't before. In the famous hadith, which is mentioned in Al-Kafi, that for the abd of Allah who observes the fara'id and they're committed to practicing the obligations, and they come closer to Allah through the nawafil. It's called the hadith of Qurb al-Nawafil. You can search for it. Qurb al-Nawafil. That person, Allah says, I will become the eyes by which he sees, or he or she sees. I'll become the hand by which they grasp. Okay, now that's something which is a promise of Allah. it's found within the, not outside of the teachings of the religion, within the teaching of religion, somebody arrives at that point. Because all these acts that we do, they bring our soul more purity, more purity, more purity, until now the heart starts to comprehend Allah, but not as a concept, not as a thought, but as a reality. Now that person might be in a position where they would, let's say, one of the names of Allah, it starts to have more meaning for them. Okay, so we have to be careful that these practices, maybe, first of all, where they come from. Second of all, are they really, is it really for me? And that's why we need to think about, we need to realize that, these, let's not downplay, those things which are such incredibly emphasized. Like, for example, Salatul Layl. Salatul Layl is something which, when Allah talks about it in the Quran, Allah says that فلا يعلم نفس ما أحضرت or فلا تعلم نفس, that no soul is aware of what it is that is waiting for them when they if they are those who leave their beds at a time where it's difficult for them to do so. ما أخفيت لهم من قرة عين جزاء بما كانوا يعملون. That's the verse. No soul is aware, meaning that Allah is, in other words, He's saying that I can't even describe for you what is waiting for you if you, for my sake, you get out of your bed earlier in the morning and you rise and you supplicate to me and you engage in the night prayer. Okay, so when we have that promise from Allah in the last of the divine revealed books, then we have to ask, well, why is it that, instead of that, we're being told that, okay, you know what, you can schedule in like a meditation session at your time, whatever works for you, like, I mean, I'm sorry, like, that's not, there's something that's about that approach which is not in line with the authentic and genuine teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam. Okay. Next question. The concept of mindfulness and meditation that I've learned just allows me to come out of my head and focus on breathing or body sensations. From a health perspective, this allows the body to go into the parasympathetic mode or the rest and digest mode, which promotes healing. This has helped me rewire my mind so I'm much more present when praying my salah. I feel it's because of my training my mind to quiet consistently through a mindfulness practice. Okay, alhamdulillah. So that's great. Now, let's say that when we're focusing on breathing, okay, one of the hadith that we have from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, it's reported that he said that لِكُلِّ نَفَسٍ مِّنْ أَنفَاسِكُمْ شُكْرٌ لَازِمٌ, or something to that extent. He says that for every breath that you take, there is a thankfulness which is necessary. بَلْ أَلْف شُكْر, but rather 1,000 thanks. So if somebody is focusing on their breath and they're, let's say that they have this in mind, they don't necessarily have to like quote the hadith but at least they have this in mind, that even this right here, this one seemingly insignificant action, it is by the hawl and the quwwah of Allah, then it takes on a lot more meaning. Okay? And the sister says that this helped her in salah. That's awesome. Okay, so but let's keep in mind also that this can be one of other things that we can consider that will help us in our salah. Okay, for example, like one of the most effective ways of being able to remember Allah in salah is being in the state of remembrance of Allah outside of salah. Meaning that when somebody is mindful of remembering Allah, at least at this level, that when they go about their actions, they're checking themselves and they're asking that, am I doing this in the way that Allah wanted me to do it? Right? Am I looking? Am I glancing here? Am I on autopilot, or am I checking myself? That's taqwa, right? When somebody's doing that outside of prayer, then they'll find automatically inside of the prayer that they'll have a lot more effect. Now, maybe they didn't have time to do the breathing. I mean, they didn't have time to, like, let's say, before the salah. But that same person, if they might find that when they enter their prayer, suddenly, it's like another world. It's, and they're like, where did this come from? Well, it came because of your efforts outside of salah. And that's why, sometimes people say that, well, why is it that when I do the meditation, when I do this, I immediately feel connection. But then when I do my salah, I don't feel that connection. Well, imagine that if every salah that we prayed, we had that connection, then when would we ever try harder to get that salah which has that connection? You know what I'm saying? Like, meaning that it's a sign for us. Like, if our salah consistently is dry and dead, then we gotta be like, hey, what is going on? What do I need to improve? Where I need to work on? How to best respond to Muslims who believe in spirituality as the only means of worshipping and don't see the need for hijab or prayer, for example. So there are different approaches that we can take depending on how that person works. One of them is the logical approach. Okay. The logical approach is, if we say this, okay, that let's say somebody says that I don't see the need for hijab or prayer, I'm just going to be spiritual. Okay. So then we have to ask this question that what is the mark of spirituality? Right? What is it that determines that somebody has attained that spirituality or not? Right? Like, is it you yourself, or is it something external to you? If it's something that is external to you, well, by what criteria do they say that this is what's good and what's wrong? If it's you yourself, then isn't that just saying that you're your own God? Okay, or let's say that somebody says that they're taking this approach. They're like, you can't dictate to anybody what they should do in order to feel spiritual, right? That's not within the power of anyone. Everyone has their own path to spirituality. Well, if you look at within that statement right there, there's a contradiction, because what they're saying is something which is an absolute statement, which is that everyone has their own path to spirituality. They have to do their own thing. Well, that's an absolute statement. But what they're saying in their absolute statement is that everyone, it's relative to themselves. And that's a logical fallacy. Right? So like, what gives them the right to state something which is absolute in order to assert that it's relative? Right? So that's why, it when it comes to this thing of like spirituality versus Islam, this is where the discussions that we have in our aqidah, in our beliefs about prophethood, they're so important to like master on a logical level. That once I accept that there's God, then I also have to go to that next level to understand that the religion and that path to God is not going to come from me, it's going to come from Him. And I must seek it out from Him. And I have to take the pains to do that. And when I find that guide that God has given me, I am going to submit to Him. Submission. Islam is submission. I need to submit. It's not about me anymore. Right? I'm gonna submit myself to that creed and to that practice. And it's those actions that practice is going to tell me. That's going to be the marker for when I die. It's going to be my amal that lives with me, and my actions that live with me. Okay. The next question, and I know that I've just been looking at the questions tab here. I haven't really been looking at the chat tab. So I think maybe there've been some chats that I've kind of missed out on. But anyhow, I'm personally having a hard time with the backlash from Muslim people who don't really look into self-help tools and criticize the self-help industry, and then also the New Age spirituality people who aren't connected to Allah. It's been hard to find the balance between the two. It is possible to merge the two together and to understand Islam from a spiritual point of view. I'm not sure how to deal with Muslims who mock or criticize me for doing yoga or mindful meditations. So I think that one, just in terms of vocabulary, Sister Teresa, and alhamdulillah, it's nice to see you and many of the other people who we know from the past. May Allah Ta'ala, I hope that may Allah bless you all, and I hope you guys are all doing well. One thing about terminology, like, should we take the approach of merging? Because in a way, that isn't that kind of saying that sort of acknowledging, maybe you could make this argument that it's kind of acknowledging the primacy and the importance of both, like, and you're saying that both of them have good things to offer. Let's kind of like come together and bring them together. I would say that we should be looking at things and be very confident and look at, like, these are not something which is Islam has a solution for spirituality. I mean, Islam is spirituality, and Islam is meant to take somebody to spirituality. And the purpose of our creation is to come to know Allah. This is from the Quran, and to know His attributes and to get closer to Him. And so these are things which should be found within Islam. Now, when it comes to techniques, we can rely on some of the vocabulary and some of the frameworks and structures that they have, but we should acknowledge it as being something which is from Islam and being authentic. Now, I do think that one of the purposes of the seminar is just to raise awareness and to say that there's work that needs to be done. And some of this work is really in the form of like taking what we have, but really making it more accessible to people. And even when it comes to like translations and printing and these type of things. Okay, so I think that at this point we have reached our time limit, and I wanted to just let me quickly skim the chat window and see if there's anything I just quickly can address before we end up. And I'm so sorry for those who I'm not going to be able to address. So let's see, can you provide the names of the book? I mean, the two books that I was looking at in this presentation, just as an example, I'm not promoting these books. I'm just saying that there's just two that I looked at. One of them was this book here. It's called The Mindfulness Journal for Teens. And then the other book that I was looking at, it was called the How to Train a Wild Elephant. Okay. And then let's see. So point 1 and 2, is this meditation or reflection? It seems more like reflection. Yes, if we use like the more technical definition of meditation, where it says that, okay, where you want to clear your mind of all thoughts, and you don't want to think about anything, that's not like the idea that, okay, in Islam, that are we told to like clear our mind of anything and everything? No. Okay. So, but like when I was talking about like reflection over death, reflection over our past deeds, the reason why I said it's meditation is because sometimes people downplay something that's not called meditation. And sometimes the effect of somebody reflecting over these things can have a meditative effect. So that's why I wanted to classify it as meditation. Okay. All right. Okay. So is there there was a request to share the salawat of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. That can be found in Mafatul Jinan, in the section of the salawat on the al-Hujaj al-Tahira, like on the pure proofs of Allah. There's a salawat for each one of the 14 members of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. And yeah, feel free to contact me, inshallah. I can send you that. Okay. I think I'll have to probably end up at this point. And again, my apologies for not being able to address all the questions. But inshallah, maybe we can consider, there's a lot more, many more aspects to explore in this topic. Maybe in the future we can have a follow-up seminar to discuss some of these questions that came up, and also look at these different aspects. Right. Well, thank you very much, and may Allah bless you all, and may He guide us all to His path, and may He accept our intentions. And thank you once again to all the participants and the organizers for this program.